What you're about to see is the biggest political cover-up in modern American history. Not a conspiracy theory, not a partisan talking point. The documented story of how Washington hid the truth about a president who couldn't lead. The year is 2021. Joe Biden takes the oath of office as the 46th President of the United States. America is told he is sharp, experienced, steady, the man who will restore dignity and competence to the White House. But from the very first months of his presidency, something was wrong. Biden's team implemented what insiders called a lid, an early shutdown of press access, more aggressively than any modern president. Press conferences were rare, unscripted interviews nearly non-existent. When he appeared in public, there were note cards, there were handlers nearby, there were long searching pauses that stretched past awkward and into alarming. In 2021, Biden fell 3 times ascending the stairs of Air Force One on live television in front of the world. His team called it a slip. In 2022, he wandered off stage after speeches. He turned to shake hands with people who weren't there. He called out the name of a congresswoman who had died weeks earlier, asking if she was in the room. His team called it charm. Then came a bombshell. In February 2024, Special Counsel Robert Hur investigated Biden's handling of classified documents. Hur concluded, on the record, in a published federal report, that Biden was, quote, a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory who could not recall the years of his own vice presidency and could not remember what year his son Beau Biden had died. The White House called it a political hit job, but 50 million Americans read those words and felt what they'd been sensing for 3 years confirmed in black and white. So who was actually leading the country? Inside the White House, something unprecedented was happening. A small, tight circle of unelected staffers had effectively constructed a wall around the president. Chief of Staff Ron Klain, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Senior Advisor Anita Dunn, and Domestic Policy Chief Susan Rice. These were the names running the agenda. They controlled what Biden said, where he went, and who he spoke to. They pre-screened reporters. They managed every public appearance down to the minute. They called it protecting the president. Former White House physician Ronnie Jackson, a Republican congressman from Texas who served as medical advisor to Presidents Bush, Obama, and Trump, began sounding the alarm publicly. This is not a normal presentation for a man his age, Jackson stated. When you look at the gait, when you look at the cognitive confusion in his answers, I'm alarmed. Jackson called for a cognitive assessment. He was dismissed as a partisan hack. The machine kept running. Executive orders were signed. Summits were attended. State dinners proceeded. Whether Biden fully understood what was in front of him, or whether aides were making decisions in his name, remained deliberately unknown to the American people. The people running the cover-up were not elected. They had taken no oath to the American people, and they had every incentive to keep the truth hidden. Because as long as Biden was in the Oval Office, they were in power too. The cover-up would have been impossible without the active cooperation of America's mainstream media. For 3 years, the same press corps that spent 4 years of the Trump administration analyzing every tweet, dissecting every gesture, and running every awkward pause through a panel of experts, refused to report what their own cameras were capturing. When independent reporters raised questions about Biden's cognitive state, they were called ageist. When conservative commentators cited public incidents of confusion, they were dismissed as partisan. When journalists at smaller outlets reported what witnesses were saying behind closed doors, that Biden was far more diminished in private than in managed public appearances, major networks and newspapers buried the story. CNN anchors assured their audiences, week after week, that the president was vigorous and ready. MSNBC hosts mocked any mention of health concerns as right-wing propaganda. Then one night, the cameras couldn't lie anymore. June 27, 2024, Atlanta, Georgia, CNN's debate stage. The world watched as President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump stood side by side before the American people. What unfolded in those 90 minutes was not a bad night. It was the collapse of a 3-year deception. Biden shuffled through answers, losing his train of thought mid-sentence. He stared into the distance with glazed, unfocused eyes. His voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. He cited a statistic, then forgot what the statistic was. He trailed off. He looked lost. 51 million Americans watching live understood in real time what had been hidden from them. The next morning, Democrats who had spent 3 years insisting Biden was sharp and capable began calling, some publicly, some privately, for him to step aside. Within days, reports emerged that former President Barack Obama had concluded the situation was untenable. Within weeks, major Democrat donors demanded he withdraw. On July 21, 2024, Joe Biden announced he would not seek re-election. He handed his endorsement to Vice President Kamala Harris. The cover-up had crumbled, but the damage had already been done. For 3 full years, America had been governed without transparency about who was actually making decisions. And the American people were never given the chance to decide for themselves. The consequences of this cover-up are not abstract. They are measured in real numbers. 10 million illegal border crossings occurred during the Biden administration, the largest in American history. Fentanyl killed more than 100,000 Americans every single year. Inflation reached a 40-year high in 2022, destroying the savings and buying power of ordinary American families. In August 2021, Biden oversaw the chaotic, humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan, an exit that shocked allies, emboldened enemies, and left Americans stranded behind enemy lines. Russia invaded Ukraine. Iran funded proxy wars across the Middle East. China grew increasingly aggressive. And through all of it, the question hung in the air unanswered. Who was actually making these decisions? When someone in the Biden White House chose to forgive hundreds of billions in student loans, who signed off? When the southern border was effectively thrown open, who gave the order? Those are not partisan questions. They are constitutional questions, and every American deserves an honest answer. This story is not over. As more insiders come forward, as more documents surface, as the full picture of the Biden White House emerges, America First Daily will be here, every day, breaking it down, naming the names, citing the facts. No spin, no agenda, just the truth that the mainstream media refuse to tell you. If you believe the American people deserve honest answers, hit that subscribe button right now, ring the notification bell, share this video with someone who needs to see it, because the only way to hold power accountable is to stay informed, and we are here every single day to make sure you are. Stay vigilant, stay American,